You frequently are identified as a community activist, so I wanted to talk to you about that first. Can you define that a little more thoroughly? What, what kind of activism are you involved in?
Um, well, I'm involved in dealing with a lot of children, trying to empower a culture and a certain class of children, specifically in poverty, which I deal with a lot of kids. But just being from my culture and my community area, a lot of the kids that I deal with is close to me, are poverty type kids, as well as with adults, trying to empower the mind and education mind of adults as well. Um, Also, within housing, is another area that we do community activism in the housing area, of trying to empower people on how to own their own house, being able to own and have an asset so that they're able to have an asset to have a chance to try to send their kid to college. A lot of people are not educated on some of the small things that a lot of us who might be educated on think the average human being should be educated on. Um, Also within I say like criminal activities with people, trying to help a lot of the young men who have a lot of different run-ins with the law enforcement, trying to get them to be educated and understand on how not to get into a certain situation that would get you in trouble with the police, but on how to be able to respect and talk to a law officer. So really within the community activists, it's really a lot of educational with the mind, because that's something I believe in, within human development, that a lot of citizens really don't understand like what's going on, the type of society we living in, or the way that it is ran every day, through a systematic structure. So it's really more of an educational community activist of trying to show and explain and just open the minds of people to think a little bit further than what we usually have thought. Not to give you my answer, but for you to look a little further and get an answer more than what you have seen as face value or just right there on surface.
Do you do this with a specific organization, or do you
The keep
get
it
involved with various organizations? Or?
Keep it 200 organization is, which is the people's organization. That's who I do it with. I do it through. But I also work with Nehemiah. I also work with FG Faith Coalition. Um, I work with the Urban League. I mean, I kind of work with a little bit of everybody in churches, things like that, because it kind of goes back to the unity perspective of what I've been pushing for years of trying to bring people together. So, but overall, it's usually keep it 200 linked with whomever the organization is.
And that's a local organization.
No, it's I would have to say it's nationally, to be honest, because we're through the internet. So we have people that we deal with in Thailand. We have people we deal with in Philippines. We have people we deal with over in uh, I forgot the other area. I'm
Are
sorry.
these people that you met when you lived in Memphis?
No, these are people that I have met like just traveling in and out of when I was doing entertainment. Anybody that I bump into or get a connect on, I stay in tune with that, because you just never know, what kind of relationships you're building and how you can connect out to different areas.
And how many people would you say in Springfield are part of
Um, After the kids event the other day for them that I did not know knew what was going on, we knew it was at like 5,000. Our general base holds about 5,000. That's not in Springfield. So in Springfield, it's kind of hard to tell because through the internet.
Like 10 or is it like 100 or?
No, it's some thousands.
Thousands?
It's some thousands that understand and know about the Keep It 200 network. Are very familiar with it. So yeah, between children and adults, it's in the thousands.
So, can you talk a little bit about what propelled you into the mayor's race and why you chose to go into that race as opposed to, for example, an alderman race or something
Well,
closer, a little more local?
because um, the platform was there. The platform was there for what I'm pushing. Um, I know a lot of people look at, what does unity and what does togetherness and stuff have to do with a political race, and it has a lot to do with a political race. It's really one of the first things or principles that we need to, relook at that will help us as people to deal with certain issues. Um, Being in the city that I'm in, where we have a majority uh, white population and a small percentage of black population, and then moving to Memphis, where it is a majority black and it is less white citizens, opened my eyes up of really how separated, segregated, and divided that we are, not just in Springfield, but in America in general. Sometimes it takes people, you have to kind of be in different areas, be put in different positions to kind of see that. You kind of don't get the whole outlook. When I got to Memphis is when it opened up a lot to me of the race that I'm from, of the difference of the opportunities that it is in Memphis, Tennessee, where you have a majority black area, than it is where I'm actually from. So, um, being able to have that outlook and dealing with a lot of these kids within community activists, where a lot of times you're dealing with the problems that are never part of agendas in political campaigns. Seeing poverty, not just a lot of times. I know when I looked at the books, the no the our books, accounting books for the overall city. What you'll find in there is that we allocate funds or whatever to like homeless shelters or whatnot, or we get grants or whatever it might be to go to homeless shelters. But that's poverty. But poverty goes so much deeper than that. And when you look on there, we never have a agenda. And these are classes of people. This is white, this is black, this is foreign people who, as we know, that campaigns take money to fight. These people can't even afford to have a candidate to get in a race to even voice their concerns. Um, so that is why I got in the race, because I felt like a class of people have never been part of an agenda. And there's nowhere in a campaign of history, in an agenda of Springfield, that you can find where poverty, class, and poor people have been part of an agenda. That's still a class of people. Just like they talk about infrastructure, how the roads and the highways and the sewers and the sidewalks are damaged and they need to be repaired. Well, we have people who are a class of people who should be just as valuable as pieces of property, who are damaged, who need to be repaired. And we have to be able to come up with some type of agenda plan and invest in human development, because human development is part of economic development. When you look at it, when you can repair people, you can repair a city, you can make it stronger, you can make it more sustainable for years to come. When you have and that's considered unity at the end of the day. And I just seen that those classes of people, they don't have a voice. They're not at the table. They're not at the round table discussions. Um,
So would you say that would be your top priority as mayor, is addressing
that would definitely
poverty
be my
needs?
top priority. Yes, ma'am.
And where would, for example, the streets and the sewers and things like that, the library, tourism, where do those fall in your priorities?
In my priority, they're definitely part of your priority and your plan list. I'm not taking those out. I think people kind of get Mr. Screwed when I talk about the poverty over the infrastructure. All I'm saying is that if we can allocate an agenda and put a plan together for those, we also need to do the same for people who are in this class of category of poverty, because these people are not just in poverty because they just don't want to work. Yes, some people don't want to work. Some people are lazy, you know. But when you look deeper, that's what Keep It 200 is about. You have to look a little more deeper than what media tells you. You have to look a little more deeper than what we see on face value of paperwork. You have to really research further and see what's going on. And it's scientific proven, it's stats and facts that show all this. But these are things that we do not talk about. We do not educate the people about. And we have to be able to deal with that type of problem if we're going to move Springfield forward. I just don't understand how we can move forward and we're not bringing a certain class of people. And I'm not just talking about rich, but even because middle class. We talk about middle class, but we don't talk about poor and poverty.
So what might be an element of that plan?
Well, one of the things that I I put out my 40-50 plan the other day, which was a plan of trying to come up with some type of solutions for the next 40 to 50 years. Um, I think a lot of people are looking for, and I mean, Springfield's not in a bad position too much, but are we planning when we're talking about for the future of what we want Springfield to look like when we know at the end of the day we're going to be part of the future, but we're not going to be part of the future. A lot of the children are going to be the ones part of the future. Are we planning for it to be for the next 40, 50 years or for the next 10 years? So part of the plan that I talked about is being able to invest more money into community programs of education. School is one type of education, but school is not necessarily just the only piece of education that develops you or have you ready for life and society in general. We still need to look at a lot of the community programs because we have to recondition the mind of that certain class of people. Being able to create jobs and aggressively try to recruit factories or warehouses that can move to Springfield, and those can be opportunities that we can be able to get those classes of people jobs. When we talk about assistant programs, it depends how you look at assistant programs. Some assistant programs, you basically can pull them in to Springfield, bring in certain grants from state or federal or whatnot, and you just don't have the programs for people to come in and they lean on. Because a lot of the assistant programs in our government, psychologically, without knowing, has people feeling comfortable to lean on that this is how I need to live or this is how I live for the rest of my life. And then the kids see that. So it's breaking that cycle that we're able to bring in more effective and tactical programs that assist you, but as well educate you. So educating the mind is a big piece that I will be looking at and trying to fix that problem. Because that's, to me, that's one of the only ways that you're gonna be able to fix it. Um, and I know my plan that I put out, some people might look at it like that's a little over the top. I said 140 million. Well, it was Gail Simpson corrected me. It was 146 million that was allocated towards infrastructure for a 10-year program, 3 to 10 year program. Mayor Houston said it was grants and things that brought that to play. But if that money is out there available for infrastructure, I'm pretty sure we can find 146 for 10 years program to be able to help a poverty class of people. What we do with that money, it could be within trying to create housing for people to be homeowners and not just give you a house and say be a homeowner, but an education piece has to be with all that to be able to teach them. And I know this sounds like childish stuff, but you have to understand and look at the minds of humans. The newspaper itself is at like a third or fourth grade level. And those are within systematic structure for people to understand and be able to read it effectively.
You deal a lot with kids and this, what's your impression of the Springfield schools? How effective are they doing, and what do you see the mayor's role in working with the school system?
Well, even though the mayor cannot dictate certain money categories, but I think that the mayor, being a leader and being a face of the city, can speak on issues that can empower citizens to be able to stand up and speak on and address and be able to come up with some type of solution. I think that we need more diversity in the schools. They have a 40 years dissent decree, and we're talking about 40 years that a federal court has held them accountable to addressing the issues and getting something done in 1976. And we're in 2015 and they're still out of compliance. That goes back to that systematic structure. Within the school, it's hard for a child, when you look at a psychological standpoint, it's hard for a child to be able to identify when what you see majority of the time is your opposite race. That's not a problem because we learn from each other. But at the same time, this child needs to be able to identify with its race as well. Now in the school system, you have, of the majority kids are minorities, mixed kids, African Americans, and other races. That's the majority of population. But then the majority of the school teachers are white citizens. We have to be able to diverse that because kids got to be able to identify. The only thing that they can identify in District 186 with people of their race, of minorities, is the bottom lower jobs. When you kind of look, you look and see that a friend of your parents or whatever is the detention teacher, is the special ed assistant, is the cook, is the custodian.
You've also got, I mean, there are cases that the principal, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, that you got eight. I think it's eight principals of within the diversity.
Of about, aren't there only like 20 schools?
Uh,
I'm sure.
they got it's about 30. I think it's about 30 something, because they got different outside of schools. Got all these different programs that they have in different institutions now that's considered schools or whatnot. But yeah, but I'm the principal thing is not necessarily too much of what I talked to them because they're making changes there. The teacher's perspective is more of what I'm talking about because that's what you see with, that's what you deal with on an everyday process that the kids are identifying with.
Before you threw your hat into the race for mayor, how thorough was your knowledge of the workings of City Hall? What did you do to prepare, and what have you done during the race? And what have been the biggest surprises? I assume you've done some research.
Research. I looked at the books, the budget. I spoke to different individuals and political people that are in different positions, getting more education on it. Um, but I don't have the experience that my candidates have with inside of City Hall. But at the same time, I don't believe that necessarily doesn't mean that an individual cannot be a productive or effective person in that position. If that was the case, we wouldn't have some of the new things that we have today in the world when people create something. When we stay just embracing the same thing over and over and over, and we never kind of go outside the box, we never know what we can create. That's what America is about at the end of the day. Something always has been created, and that's what gives us the different turns and takes us in different years and ways of society. So, and I'm not scared to say that my knowledge is not like any of my opponents at all. But a community activist, one of the things about that is that a community activist always finds herself at a table in negotiation with the same people that are in City Hall, that are in political structures, trying to fight and trying to bring some type of equality for the common good for certain classes or their interests of people or locations. So we have a similar relationship when you're talking about trying to help people, trying to help citizens, and trying to help your city. It might be a little different, but that's who you're at the table with at the end of the day that you're trying to pull the rules for.
So when you've been around the table negotiating with the city of Springfield, have you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Not with different organizations who kind of run or control certain things in Springfield. Just going through forums and things like this. Like right now, you guys are a very powerful institution in Springfield. I'm sitting at the table talking to you.
So what was the result of a situation that you've been around a table with elected officials? What did you achieve from that conversation and compromise?
I would say mostly what was achieved was seeing the lack of knowledge that not only that I hold, but people that I am fighting for and speaking for, that they hold, being able to see that a lot of citizens not being educated and knowing what is going on to even be able to come up with an effective decision or productive decision, to a solution. So a lot of things I seen was that, and it doesn't make you stupid, or, it just makes you that you just don't know. You haven't been aware of it, and it hasn't been introduced to you. So that's a lot of things that I have seen when I was at the table. Also, again, see a lack of diversity when I'm sitting at the table. As we're sitting here right now, there's a lack of diversity in the room. So it's kind of hard to have a balanced structure of what we're talking about when we have that lack. and that's another unity situation that we have to be able to work on. I think a lot of times that dealing with this Keep It 200 network is showing what my vision of what I would like to see America look like. So when we deal with people overseas, when we deal with white citizens, black citizens, we're trying to show people we make an effort to go out and communicate and be in tune and be in touch with different races. We make an effort, just like in a political campaign. A lot of times, people who's running for any offices, um, they might want to go. Let's be honest, they might want to go. Let me go get some black people to put them in my commercial so I can show people that I'm not racist. That's how bad it has got that we have to go get a friend, go give me a couple kids or some friends, just so I can show people that I'm not racist and I'm about all people. That doesn't make people racist. That's why we're dealing with a system structure that by just being involved in our culture, that we automatically identify with people who we look like. Just like on a job perspective, we feel more comfortable if we're in a hiring position. We're going to hire majority of people who we look like because we identify with that. Just like if you was to put me in a hiring position here, 9 times out of 10 by human nature, I would, if they were saying, look, Sam, we're trying to get people over here to work, who do you think I would go try to talk to get a job first? People who look like me. Not because of racist perspective, because that's as humans are how we identify. We have not been educated on that piece enough to be able to change that.
How will you change it?
I would change it through the education piece. The education,
Can you elaborate on the education piece? Because when you look at poverty, since the war on poverty in the 60s,
yes, ma'am.
President Johnson
Yes, ma'am.
started that war.
Yes, ma'am.
We have about the same percent of people in poverty today,
Yes, we do.
ironically, as we had then. So despite what appeared to be good efforts, we failed.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
tell me concretely what steps you would take, because we all want to move that ball.
Right. The first steps that I would take, and this is the honest truth, I said this the other day, we have to do some of the things that we usually don't want to do, and that's research. I just was looking the other day at President Johnson's war on poverty, and a lot of the programs that I've seen that was put together, which is still in play today, is kind of just allocating funds to a program for people to come and get some type of assistance, so you can be able to make it the next day, so you can be able to pay a bill, whatever it might be. You come in, and that's again a systematic structure where you come in and you get used to just being able to get a check and be able to pay. You never got educated in any form or fashion. And I know some people might say you have to have it yourself, you have to want it yourself, but it's not that easy when you look at the human development and when you look at the media perspective. When you look at the programs within the education system as far as within the school, we get used, the mind gets used to things like this. So it would be a lot of research. I would like to work with UIS, where we can bring in some type of educational research team, a diversity one, to where we can sit here and talk to people and be able to find out more different type of solutions to be able to fix this. Because I'm not saying that I have the answers, but what I'm saying is that it needs to be awareness of this, and we need to make this a priority to seeing how we can fix it and not just allocate dollars to people and say we're helping people.
How much of the problem do you think is racism versus just lack of economic opportunity these days?
Honestly, I don't believe that some parts of it is racism. And when I talk about that systematic structure, the systematic structure that I talk about, because a lot of people say systemic, and I don't talk about systemic. I talk about systematic because a lot of people look at systematic as like a car manufacturing place where you have the assembly line and you do the same step over and over and over till you complete the car. And I feel like that's where our minds are as people. We're not necessarily racist, and I don't think that the white race, I think they have a true heart of wanting to help that problem and be able to unite and work together. But we're missing the education piece. Before it's economic development, um, and economic, as you talked about, is education. And it's not, when we talk about education, usually we just stay at school education, but it goes so much further because school education doesn't prepare you for the society in general. School education prepares you more of how to go get a job, how to sustain in other parts, of doing the basic same thing. You go to school, you graduate, the next thing you go to college. After college, you're supposed to be able to go get a job, which a lot of times that doesn't work. Um, that's what school prepares you for. But it's other educational programs that we have to have in play that even things like you can share and Mr. Bernie can share. We can't find the education that you have in school. But in community programs, these are things that help you sharing that type of knowledge with people that can help within a community to change the minds of people. It's here. We have to invest in human development of the minds of our people through an education form of however we see that fit.
So who would handle this for you in your administration? Would you want to set up a new department to do something like this? Or would it be through community relations that already exists?
It would be
How much
outside.
money you would want to fund an effort?
I
It
would.
would take some money.
What you said at the end? I'm sorry. You said
How much money also?
Okay.
So would you have a new department do this? And how much money do you think you would need to get this done?
It would definitely be a new department because I think that's how we would get new ideas out. That's how I think we'll find different solutions with a new department. But still being able to work with the departments that's in place now that might have this under their belt that they're supposed to work on, because we can't discredit away the research and the time and efforts and knowledge that they have put in over the years of trying to fight this solution. So it would be a different team. From the money perspective, um, I said the 145 million, which I don't really think that's a bad thing, especially knowing that after the mayor said we're like about 600 million. I don't know if that was yearly.
That includes CWLP.
Is that
So
is
you
that
know.
is that
City
CWLP?
budget's about 100 million, as I recall, but I could be wrong. But,
Should.
I think it's about 96.
Yeah, in the corporate fund, about
In the
100, and then
corporate
the
fund, yeah.
CWLP is about twice that.
Right.
Oh, so there's okay.
Talking about doubling the corporate fund.
Okay, well, thank you for correcting me. I just learned
I
something.
think that's the case. Don't take it to the bank.
Yeah, if we're 100, so you're saying the city is about 100
I
million.
believe so in the corporate
The
fund, the
non-utility
general
part.
fund.
The 9, okay. I would say just being able to allocate, if we're talking about 100 million, $1 million in a 10-year program wouldn't even be bad. It can possibly take more than that after looking at more solutions and seeing if it costs. But even right now on the books, we don't even have that on the books.
How would you convince aldermen and taxpayers that that's a good investment for the city?
Through the stats and facts that is already in place that you can find right in our own city records. I would go further than it just being unemployed and the numbers, the percentage of poverty, and things like that. I would have to go further into it of showing them through. I have talked to some of the professors out of UIS who has been in some of the forums, and they have been in very much agreement with me on a lot of this situation. So being able to prove scientific research of showing these same things of how, from a mental standpoint, how this is affecting people, because it's kind of like hospitals. Hospital, when you have a certain disease, or when you're dealing with a certain medication, when a certain individual has a certain behavior or whatever, and you have to condition that behavior with some type of medicine. That's all through scientific. This is the same thing we're dealing with. We're dealing with disease that is on human beings. Poverty is a disease, how I look at it, and we have to be able to come up with some type of medicine and cure to be able to cure this disease. So I will show it in the same form, trying to convince them as if we show how we're going to deal with a certain disease, how this medicine is going to be able to affect these certain classes of people and be able to help them as well within a certain period of time or years of how it will help overall sustain our city.
I have a, I don't know if it's a fair question or not, but
It's always fair.
as a first-time candidate, first-time
sir.
candidates who haven't done this before, very hard to win a citywide race like this.
Mhm.
I think you might agree with that. You've been to forums with these other people. Are you willing to say, if it's not you, who you would prefer among the field of candidates based on who gets it, or is close to getting the kind of stuff you're talking about over the needs of the city?
I'll say, man, because I like Jim and I like Paul, and they both. I say Jim kind of gets it more, but I believe that Paul gets it. But if, like you said, if we're talking about who gets more of what I'm talking about, I would have to probably say Jim, who understands it more.
And there's Gail also, of course.
Yeah, and Gail, and the reason why I say that, Gail understands because we're from the same culture. So what I'm talking about and what she's talking about is what we have been talking about for years to people in some form or fashion. So Gail gets it more, but I want to step outside of that box by dealing with another culture. Again, that's going back to unity of somebody outside the culture who is not in that same culture who understand that, and that's why I picked Jim.
But you voted for yourself, or you voted for
No, yeah, I'm voting for myself definitely. Yes, I'm fighting. I'm fighting to win. I know it's an uphill battle. I know it's very hard, but you never get in anything. It's just halfway doing. If you shoot for the stars, that means you're going to land somewhere good on whatever mission that you're on and you're trying to accomplish.
You had said something previously about the downtown festivals.
Yes,
and that they
ma'am.
weren't necessarily events for every community. Can you talk about that a little bit, about your feelings about that, and what you might want to change?
Yeah, I know a point of time when they had a jazz. I don't know if it was jazz committee or if they had a jazz and the blues festival and things. I know that has been removed for what reasons I do not know. That was something that was able to bring multicultural. I don't feel like that there's multicultural events down in Springfield that are held to attract the African American race down. But even outside of just the African American race, I don't feel that there is versatile or diverse events that attract more of like me and your generation on the downtown area between the ages of 21 to 45 area. As I said, that majority of the percentage in Springfield, I want to say between the ages of 21 to 55, are still a group of people that like to, go out, have some fun, go downtown, be able to still entertain and mingle and things like that. And so I think multicultural and diversity events are very much needed in Springfield downtown that will attract more people and more traffic downtown that will lead to more business, for some of the bar areas, for some of the food restaurant areas.
Have you
And
talked to like DSI about this? Or
When
have you
I-
reached out to them?
I haven't. I talked to them when I was at the forum. I talked to them then, and after the primary and stuff is when I plan to sit down with a lot of the organizations that I have been able to been invited to speak at and things like that, and try to see how can we come up with some different ideas to be able to attract more people that live in our city to downtown.
So for example, the Presidential Museum, despite Lincoln's history with slavery,
Mm-hmm.
has very low participation by African Americans.
Right.
What's your thoughts about that? How can that appeal to a broader spectrum? Have you been there?
I haven't even been there. It's not.
I
It's
gotta take you.
yeah. I heard it's a nice spot. It's honestly, it doesn't pique the interest
Okay.
of that culture.
So the history is not.
No, not necessarily that it's
Yeah.
not. It's not necessarily that it's not history.
Okay.
It's just that Abraham Lincoln. I think we're a city to where we have relied on Abraham Lincoln for so long as the forefront, which we're not, like, again, I'm not taking nothing away from it. I'm just saying that even if he is here, there's nothing wrong with building on the side to be able to attract more things. One of the things I thought about, we always, in conversation, we always throw the 1908 race riots and where NAACP was started or whatnot. You know, we always throw that in the conversation when we're talking about NAACP or things with Abraham Lincoln or history. But how much have we built on trying to make that a historic, situation downtown that might attract African
Well, they
Americans?
did, when Ozzy was mayor, they did put 8 markers out and they just unveiled the statue outside the museum like 2 years ago. That was done by a guy in Decatur. Kind of a big deal.
You said you put a statue out?
Yeah.
And the markers are downtown, they're the tall ones that stand up with the sign, the script on it.
Yeah, that's not going to attract people to come. And I mean, that's cool, but it's not. Let's be honest. It's not going to attract people to come and look at
So
some
you're talking
statues.
about more marketing it as a history.
Yes.
Yes.
Even within schools, maybe NAACP can. I know a lot of when I was in school, how I learned about the museum in New Salem and stuff. I think it was the field trip that you had to have. We can market the race ride, and that could be a collaboration with NAACP. With them having the network and access to African Americans, we're collaborating those cultures together, and we can find a way of maybe the schools being able to have more traffic, seeing about that situation down here in the downtown area. Maybe promoting and marketing more of how big of an effect that it was with the history of Abraham Lincoln and the slavery situation, which again brings our culture together. Especially if you have some African Americans on whatever board that is that will put that together. Again, those same groups of people will have access to those individuals that we can help traffic those people to the downtown area. Because the history is tied with that with Abraham Lincoln. I spoke on that a lot. I said Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, but is that where he would have stopped at today? Would he just free the slaves, or would he just sign the paper? Because he didn't necessarily free them, but would he just sign the paper? And is that where he would stop? If we are carrying on Abraham's legacy as we are doing within tourism, what would he be doing today of unity of people? What would he be doing today? I don't think that where it's at now is where he would stop. Especially after he tried to, free the slave, I think it would go further than that. So I think that we need to be held more accountable as citizens in Springfield of both races, of black and white, of coming up with some solutions that can tie our history and promote and showing our history, because our history is tied together at the end of the day. And that can attract, more multicultures downtown.
Have you attended a city council meeting?
Yes, I have. I've been
What
to
was
a few.
your impression? And how would you work with aldermen to promote your agenda?
Well,
How many?
my impression of some of the ones we've been at, I know it was one we was at where we was speaking for trying to come up with solutions to be able to help poverty classes of people. And as the mayor does, a lot of times if it's not of his interest, it's kind of just like a nonchalant look, like you really don't care. You have the aldermen that kind of sit around and you don't really get too many responses. That has been my experience when I have been there. That was one time when Larry Beckham, Larry Beckham? I don't know, he spoke.
Okay, but no. How long? Years ago or?
No, this was like last year. This was last year. That has been my experience. When that was one time I went another time. It probably was like years ago, and it was some kids I went to school with, and I think this is when they had the big issue about when it was raising the money for or raising the ticket price on loud music and the towing or something like that. And it was some young people I went to school with who went and addressed it, and that was another experience I had with it. And I have been there a few times where I've been able to see Frank Edwards speak his mind, which I really like a lot of times.
Anything going on with the federal lawsuit, or is that still
It,
pending?
yeah, it's pending right now. It's on pause. It's not something that they wanted to work within during the election time.
We are running up on our time. I wanted to ask if you, if the primary doesn't quite go your way, are you interested in running for office again down the road, or are you worn out from it, or how are you feeling now?
Oh man.
Like, is this something you really want to do?
I guess it kind of really depends on at the time of what's needed, um, what kind of vision, that God sends me. Honestly, this was definitely like I told Mr. Bernie. I came here back in May. This definitely wasn't on the plate. Which a lot of my other candidates they kind of already knew. Yes, I'm running for mayor to getting together. This wasn't on the plate. This kind of popped up out of the blue. Um, but yeah, I could see myself running again. Um, it might be a fight out there that needs a platform of awareness. Um, I think me entering into this race has opened up a lot of doors, opened up a lot of minds and awareness, um, and piqued the interest of different cultures. I have had the opportunity to talk to um, a lot of opposite of my culture citizens who have the interest of wanting to be able to bring people together. And that has probably been the biggest thing out of the whole campaign for me, that seeing that, because we don't interact a lot. And when you kind of see that you have white citizens where it's not as what people think, that we have more in common, and there is people out there that really truly care and really want to work together to really bring something together. A lot of times just at the platform, it's not there to be able to open that door. And I'm hoping that, by the end of the primary that I have been able to build a platform to where we can at least plant a seed to start working in that direction. Um, but overall, I might see myself running again. You just never know what God might ask me to do.